Porto de Cabo behind me. It's about 45 minutes south of Lisbon. It's a really beautiful part of Portugal, very Mediterranean. I came out here this morning. I wanted to fly the drone, do some aerial footage, and what I particularly wanted to do is do some photographs of the drone so I could have a look at image quality, but it is really windy. I've managed to find like a little patch here out of the window where I can record, but flying is pretty much impossible. What I'm going to try to do is take some pictures with the drone in my hand without flying it. Well, I did say pretty much impossible, but it was such a lovely morning and it's such a beautiful part of Portugal that I really couldn't resist getting the drone up into the air and practicing flying, and really got some nice footage. It's just a lovely place to spend some time. But the wind was really strong, even here right down next to the water. You can see the flags here, what the wind's doing to them, and it really was quite windy. But having said that, the Mavic handled it really well, and the footage is quite stable. Right, I'm going to have one more try with the drone because I really want to have a go at filming this ridge here. These stations of the cross are still quite nicely picked out in the morning light. But there's a part of me that thinks I'm pushing my luck. I was flying the drone earlier on around the corner about half an hour ago. It was quite where I was, but as soon as I got 20 meters away, the wind really picked up and I was trying to get some really nice panning shots of the valley. At one point when the drone was out of my sight, it was only about 300 meters away, but I couldn't really see it. I was getting warnings about there being too much wind, and looking at the screen, the drone completely wasn't really moving. It was almost like it couldn't fight against the wind, and it was really rather close to some cliffs, so it was a little bit of anxious maneuvering to try to make sure it didn't crash into anything. But that's how we learn, you know. There's a part of me thinking, Christ, I really shouldn't be doing this, but at the same time, this is how we learn. And by the time I landed it, got it home, I really felt that I'd learned a little bit better how to control it in wind and how to deal with it. So I'm going to give it one more try because I really do want to have a go at filming that, and I want to try to go home with some sort of semi-decent photographs so I can look at what the image quality is like on the Mavic. One of the things that I've noticed when looking at the footage is that despite having the sharpening turned down to -1 in the settings, it probably needs to go down a little bit further. If you look in the repeated patterns like the bushes here, or I've noticed it in rooftops in videos that I've done before, there's a kind of moire effect which looks over sharpening and it sort of flickers a little. And also looking at the footage here, you can see a flickering on the left, which is caused by the sun passing through the rotors, and the rotors making shadows on the lens of the camera. And that's something I'm going to have to be aware of in the future in terms of how the drone is orientated when I'm flying it in very bright sunny days, perhaps looking into ND filters and something like that. So here are 4 of the images in Lightroom. Let's just have a look at them. This is, as you can see, it's at ISO 200, but one of the first things that I noticed is that when you look at the dimensions, 3992 times 2242 pixels, first of all, that's actually closer to 9 megapixels. The Mavic says it has 12 megapixels, and it does in JPEG. It's 4000 times 300, which is 12 megapixels in JPEG, but for some reason the RAWs are a little bit smaller and closer to 9MP. Don't know why that is, a bit odd. But anyway, looking at the raw file, there's quite a lot of detail here. If we zoom into 100% and look at the bushes and the edges of the road, it's really pulling out quite a lot of detail. But when we zoom in a little bit more, you can see in smooth areas like the sea here, we can start to see a little bit of noise, and also in the sky there. But generally the detail on that is quite nice. There's quite a lot of color, quite a lot of contrast, and it's a decent enough file. If we look at this one, this is kind of taken in slightly lower light, and the highlights here are kind of, if we look at the histogram, they're really close to popping out. So what we can do is have a look at that and see how the Mavic handles pulling back detail in the highlights. So if we just slide the highlight, slide it down there, that's quite nice. It brings in quite a little bit of detail, and it takes the edge off those highlights that were kind of on the edge of blowing out a little bit more. You can see here there's plenty of detail. That's not bad at all. In the shadows it looks a little bit noisy, but overall no, it's not bad. It's not a bad image file. Looking over the distance there's quite a lot of noise, but some of that's also haze because it was quite a hazy morning. This file, really blown out highlights there. Let's see what we can do. And that's really quite impressive. There's a lot of detail pulled back, and that actually looks really, really nice and sharp. This is zoomed in at 200%, so that's really, really not bad at all. The cliffs at the back, not bad, but again, there's a fair bit of noise in the sky. And then this image, this is the one I took of the cross of the station. Now, this is a little bit, it's not underexposed, it's just there's a lot of shadow in it. So let's see what happens when I try to pull the shadows out. So I'll push the shadows up a little bit, zoom in again. I'm zoomed in at 200% here. That's not bad, there's a lot of detail. Looking at these twigs here, it's really pulled out quite a lot of detail, and there's still a lot of color even when I do push the shadows up. If I want to, pushing shadows can kind of wash the image out, so I'll just add a tiny little bit of clarity and a tiny little bit of vibrance just to put the color back in. That's really not bad. Again, lots of detail on the edge. This is 200%. If we look at it at 100%, it's fine, but again, it's quite noisy, which isn't really surprising from a sensor that small. So overall, not bad, but I wanted to have a look at how the camera performed in lower light. So I took it out a few days later to do some shooting at sunset. So I've come out to give it another go. I'm out on the west coast of Portugal. The sea here is really, really loud, so hopefully you can hear me. But fortunately, it's actually not that windy for a change. So I've been able to get the drone out, and I've been pretty happy with some of the footage that I've been able to get, with some of the drone footage I've been able to get. And also a lot more confident flying it out around the rock stacks. Hopefully the film is going to look nice. But what I was particularly curious about was the dynamic range of the still images. So I've been shooting in RAW again, and shooting straight into the sun, which is, it's just about setting. So obviously I've got really, really strong highlights, and that's also creating strong silhouettes and shadows. So I'm quite curious when I get home to Lightroom just to see how much dynamic range is going to be in the image and what kind of photos I can get from it. Okay, so these are the images in Lightroom. Let's have a look at this one. This is ISO 100, so it's taken in when there's quite a lot of light, but you can see because I'm shooting straight into the sun, there's a really high dynamic range there. We've lost detail in the highlights and in the shadows. Let's see if we can pull any of that back. So again, I'm zoomed into 200% here, and you can see that actually has recorded quite a lot of detail in the shot, in the shadows. Let's pull it back a little bit. Yeah, and there's quite a lot of detail there, but you can see as soon as I pull it up just a little bit, it does start to get noisy. But when we zoom out, it's really barely noticeable, and certainly when viewed on the web, you wouldn't really notice that. If I have a look at the highlights, just pull the highlights down. There's some detail coming back, but it's starting to distort a little bit. Highlights are generally quite hard to pull back when they're almost completely blown, as they have done here. It really was quite a lot of dynamic range. But overall, there's a lot of detail in that shot, and it's really quite good. Let's have a look at the next one. This is taken almost at the same time. Again, let's have a look at pulling out the shadows here. Yeah, and you can see there's quite a lot of information that it's recorded. That's quite impressive, actually. But it is noisy again in the smooth spaces at the top, like in the clouds here. You can see there's really a lot of noise, which is going to show up in print. So one of the things about this image is that I've got three very similar frames taken at different times of day with different ISOs. So this is the ISO 100, this is ISO 200. And we can load them both up together to compare them. So zooming in to 200%, you can see in the ISO 200 there's a lot more noise starting to show in the shadows, and this is before I've even tried to pull any information out, and there's a lot more noise in the sky. But still, overall, it's not that bad. When we zoom out, it's harder to see the noise, and there's still quite a lot of detail being recorded there. Now, let's compare the ISO 100 with this one taken later at ISO 400. This is zoomed into 100%. Let's zoom in a little bit more, and you can see there's quite a lot of color noise in the shadows. But again, it's really not that bad. This is a camera not much bigger than than the camera that you get in a phone, and it's really quite impressive. I was exposing quite a lot here because I was trying to get as much detail from the shadows in as possible, and this is quite a while after the sun had gone down. It's really not that bad. Again, a lot of noise in the sky, but if we zoom out to 100%, that's really not that bad. And if I just have a look at that image on its own, I'm still quite impressed with the detail. I'm quite impressed with the color rendition, and the dynamic range isn't bad at all. Let's see what we can do with the highlights there. Yeah, some of those highlights are obviously just gone because it's just beyond the dynamic range of the sensor, but not bad. I'm pulling out the noise a little bit. Well, I don't really pulling out shadows a little bit. Don't really need to because I exposed to make sure I got a lot of detail in the shadows. It is noisy. It's not something that you'd be able to print much bigger than A4, but it's really not that bad. Let's just have a look at the final image. This one also taken at ISO 400, looking right into the sun with a lot of shadows in the front. Let's just zoom in, pull back those highlights. Yeah, it's not bad. Pull out the shadows, detail in the rock. Again, there's quite a lot of detail there. Again, zoomed in at 100%, you can start to see the color noise. At 200%, the color noise is really obvious, and also the noise in the sky here. But overall, that's not bad. I really wouldn't want to go beyond ISO 400, but this is a kind of image that you could certainly use. I could certainly use it at 900 pixels for a web image, or 1200 pixels for a web image. Printing it, perhaps not, but overall, that's really not that bad at all. A little bit noisy, but I've seen far worse. So overall then, the image quality of the raw photos on the Mavic, well, it's pretty good really. It's not amazing, but when you consider the size of the camera and the size of the sensor, it's really quite impressive what DJI have done. And it's certainly usable. But at the end of the day, I bought the drone because I wanted to shoot video, and just this kind of shot that you're seeing here, which is done with the camera with the drone in tripod mode and doing a slow tracking shot across the beach, this is the kind of stuff that I really want to do. Now this summer I'm going on two quite interesting trips, and I'm really quite excited about shooting video there, shooting aerial video. And that's kind of what I really wanted to be doing this year, was learning all about that. But it's one thing having a drone, it's one thing having this kind of equipment. The other is learning how to use it and getting the most out of it, and that's something I'm really looking forward to this year. It's learning how to create sort of dramatic, interesting footage, and then editing it together. So anyway, I hope this has been useful, and once again, thanks for watching. So take care.